Past Monster Hunter to be here. Very important. Hell yeah, you got your priorities right, Helena. Good to see you. Hello, Vidar. First time catching a live stream. Excited to be here. What a texture. Nice, a nice chill stream to get texturing. Hold on, let me check my audio settings. Oh, it is what? I'm so confused. Okay, it's working. That's all that counts. Yeah, why would you go and spill like water on your computer, Thomas? What are you doing? What are you doing? You just gotta put your whole computer in like a bag of rice, you know? That's the way that you solve that thing. Oh no, the GPU. Not the GPU. Right, let me switch over in just a little bit. We just had our weekly team meeting, so it's back-to-back stuff today. But the team meeting was awesome. We had a good time chatting about all the stuff. Hello, Falco. Good to see you. Russ 3D. Lovely to see you here. Sia's here as well. Shubha Missy here as well. It's lovely to see you all. So lovely. Okay, let me do this. Yeah. Okay. Let's get Epic Pen started. We'll see if we'll crash today, huh? Just following you around digitally. Is that not like stalking? It will be uploaded. So that's the main reason. Okay, so it's a good question to ask. The last portfolio review we did was it was recorded, but it wasn't like live streamed, and I completely forgot to publish it on YouTube. It's on there now. It's unlisted. I still need to send the people that were included in it as like a link, because honestly, I'm still like flip-flopping between like, okay, where do I do this thing? You know, I have an idea for the long future, but right now, portfolio reviews is kind of in like a weird spot of like, where do I host you kind of a thing. But yeah, we'll see. I have some ideas for the future, but for now, we're back on YouTube. And we'll just do this thing here live. So yeah, it will be uploaded. It's always making changes, even though that's like the worst thing to do, especially for a live stream. But hey, here we are. At a certain point, I'll figure it out, you know? Just trust me. Personally, I like it on YouTube. It makes it a lot simpler, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Like, it makes it simpler for like the viewer, and also for me, it makes it simpler because I can just go live and like YouTube takes care of the rest of it, right? So like when the live stream stops, it just becomes a video. People can watch it, whatever happens there. So yeah, it kind of makes it easier for me as well. Did you all see, this got shared around like on ArtStation, but did you all see this like substance designer, shit, what was it again? Tetris. Yeah. Let me showcase it. Of course, I'm not going to find it now. I think it was shared in our community as well. Let's see. Let's have a cheeky peek. Because that thing was absolutely crazy. Let me show it off as well. This stuff is so crazy. Just making like fully functional Tetris in like in Substance Designer. Fucking bonkers. Oh, seems like the chat over here is still fucked. Oh, sorry for the swearing. I should have given like a warning. But hey. Yeah, this is crazy. The breakdown of it was really cool as well. Just like the amount of magic that happens in here is just ridiculous. It is really cool though. I really like it. People are so talented. The Tetris is wild. Yeah, 100%. I love this stuff just because it's just like a showcase of like, hey, I wanted to figure out like how this works, and I'm doing like all this crazy stuff to get it to work. It's just, Jesus. It is really cool though. It's so cool. I'll share the link in the chat as well. If I can find a chat at least. There we go. It was so cool to look at. All right, but that's not why we are here. We're going to be doing some portfolio reviews. So let me just all close that down. Let's hope that we can do 4 people today. I know we're getting pretty optimistic, but that's why we're here. Let me make sure that everything is set up correctly. So we have like a broad view of things. Nice. Okay. Cool. Let's get this thing on the road. So welcome back to Portfolio Reviews, everyone. Just for the people that are new in here, they don't know what this is about. We're basically doing 4 portfolio reviews today, or like 3 to 4. Don't want to jinx it, you know? Where I just basically take a look at people that want to get into the games industry or just want to like improve their work, right? And I'll kind of give them some hints on how to present yourself on your portfolio and go through some tips and all that kind of stuff to make it more applicable, right? So if you have any questions about portfolio reviews or like what you can do yourself, feel free to drop them in the chat and then we can kind of have like a conversation about it too. Hello, Joppe. Good to see you here. So let's see. First impressions, right? Like that's usually the thing that I want to start by, because that's basically what it comes down to, right? Like it's the first initial impression of like, okay, this person, first thing you see is like the quality of the artwork, right? So that's usually the thing that needs to stand out. The quality through the presentation and just through like the work itself. So I think we're in a good spot here, right? Helena has been really crushing it in the last year. I think she is well, what was the title that we gave it again? Dang it, I forgot. Top performing artist from our community, I think, with just like most works published last year. So yeah, really cool to see. I think you can see that as well, because most of this stuff is just like 10 months ago, 11 months ago, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's have a look. So environment artist, open for opportunities. I think this is also the second portfolio interview. So it's been a while since we looked at this. A lot of stuff has changed, but that hopefully means that we don't have to focus too much on like the basics, right? But let's have a look. So we've got environment artist, 3 years of professional experience, and then open for opportunities. I think what I would do with the open for opportunities is if we're really okay, if my gut instinct, my gut feeling is open for opportunities, kind of, it is a nice way of saying it, but there's also like an air of desperation there, right? That is my personal opinion. That's just my gut feeling. Like I can't help that. I think the way that it's probably better to present yourself is just saying like, hey, you've got 3 years of professional experience, which is awesome. What are the things that make you stand out, right? Like, what are you really good at? And try to word that in a way where you're almost doing like a miniature CV, but you just have like a couple of lines or maybe like a sentence that's like nicely worded that you can like really hit people over the head with like, hey, this is why you would hire me. And then you can kind of still have like open for opportunities like built in there somehow, but then at least you're giving them like, hey, this is what we do, right? You told me the same thing last time, and I suggested I put open for opportunities instead of looking for work. Um, oh, it's interesting. I think I had a different opinion on it last time, no? Where now it's changed to open for opportunities, which sounds nicer than looking for work, right? So we're making an improvement there. But yeah, like the way that I kind of look at it, and we'll get to your about page in just a second because I had a quick peek at it, is you kind of want to do, like, in my opinion, especially now, you kind of have to hit them over the head with like, hey, this is what I'm really good at. Especially because like most people have like a CV or like a long summary here where they say like, hey, this is what I'm good at, this is what I've proven in like a production environment, this is blah 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 blah. And making that almost like a CV, that could be cool, especially because you don't have like a CV link in here, right? So you kind of have to have more elaborate information somewhere, right? Or make your CV publicly available. That's also a way to do it. If you think about it from like, this is interesting. So usually I look at things from like a usability perspective, right? Like how easy is it to get the information that I want? Because a CV is like an extra click, right? So if you can save people an extra click and they don't have to download and it's like this whole faff to just get to the information, if you can shortcut that in some way, that's probably going to be better, right? But on the opposite side of the spectrum is also like you still want to have like some sort of document that they can download so that they can store that somewhere, right? To keep you in the system somehow. So you can kind of have like a short summary in the, well, basically the summary page, right? So we'll add like a short summary here, and then you just add like your PDF CV in there too. When it comes to your CV, don't add like any super personal information in there, right? So no phone number, an email address, right? I mean, that's going to be the way that they contact you, but like I would omit stuff like date of birth and all that kind of stuff, because it can be used as like personal information that can be used to, I don't know, for nefarious means, right? So I would kind of try to omit that kind of stuff and keep it like purely to the professional things. Jopamin is saying your logo being a manual gear shift shows your drive. Oh god, Joppe. I didn't even make that connection and now I can't unsee it. That's gonna be great. Cool. The rest of it, pretty standard, right? I mean, there's not too much that you can do with the rest of this stuff. So that's pretty good. I cannot remember what we looked at last time. I think it might have been like these two were the last things we looked at, if I can remember correctly. So all this stuff is new since last time we talked, which is amazing by itself, right? So freaking kicking ass over here. So we're just gonna have a look at like a sample. Opening with like an automatic playing video, hitting me over the head with like, hey, look, cool little fish, bunch of cool stuff to look at. It's pretty, really selling the idea. So I like what's going on here for sure. That's a good thing, right? Like you want to wow people, right? You want to come into a project and then you just say like, hey, this is the thing, right? Like don't hide it, fully on blast. That's what we're seeing here. So that's really good. Got like some additional shots. Got some like interesting zoomed in shots. Got the detail lighting. This is personal. I'm not too... I don't know what the value of detail lighting is, apart from like a lighting artist, I guess. I'm not saying that you have to remove it. I'm just... it always feels like this throwaway thing that because other people have done it, it's kind of in there now. Seen it in real with screen percentage set to 200. Is that meant to justify like the... I don't know if it's my internet because we're streaming or something like that, but Yeah. It kind of looks like a little bit jittery, right? A little bit laggy, probably because of 200% screen space. I would probably go for like a smooth video rather than I don't know, the highest possible like quality that you can have. Tidable materials. Looks cool. It's got the foliage stuff. Got the peeper. Showing off some of that tech stuff that you love to do. So that's awesome. High poly. Got some rock sculpts. You got this breakdown. We're kind of going through like a whole bunch of stuff really quick, right? But like this sort of stuff where it's like 12 seconds, that is really cool because I get like a really good idea of, okay, this is what you do. Very quick overview of the pipeline. Awesome. Same here, very short, snappy videos, really good. That's super cool. What you could potentially do with some of these things is showcase like low poly, high poly, texture, and then in engine or something like that, where you showcase like the whole pipeline basically for like a single asset. That could potentially be interesting. But overall, like the presentation is like really well done, right? Like pretty consistent. If I had to nitpick, it's this jump from like having full width to like smaller width. But we're really splitting hairs at that point, right? Yeah, pretty cool project. Cool to see. Yeah. The consistency of the presentation is pretty good, right? Where they kind of have like the same border, same fonts, all that kind of stuff. Really nice. Let's have a look at another one. Same kind of format, right? Works really well. And then you also did like an article for 80 level as well. Okay, I got a question for you, Helena. How should I word this? Do you think that the time invested into that 80 level article was worth the amount of potential views or clicks that you would have gotten? I'm curious. Oh, it's one of those. I didn't write the article, they wrote it. I mean, fuck. I don't even yeah. But I think the engagement is nice. Okay, that's good. So I have my own thoughts on like 80 level. I think the way that they're approaching that whole thing is just like it kind of defeats the purpose because you kind of want to have like the artist talking about the work at least, right? If they write the article, then like what's the point? They just want traffic to use your name. But I digress. That's a whole different conversation. Just feels a little bit weird to me. Let's get back to the portfolio though. So looks really nice. Let's Okay. Okay. Oh my god. I told you. Let's use a notepad. Oh my god. Go back to like old school YouTube. That would be awesome. So no. What do you mean? No, I can see it move. What? Oh, it's good now. Hudson, what are you doing? Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I think just the program that I used just like freaking crashed in the back end. Cool. Yeah, it wouldn't be like a stereotypical stream without any technical difficulties, huh? So I feel like everyone's used to it by now, you know? Okay, let's go back. What I was missing here on this portfolio piece was that we're kind of missing like the stereotypical like game breakdowns, right? It's just, okay, how did you actually make your individual assets, right? Just breaking it down to like the actual very technical core of like all these things, because it looks beautiful. And like you have like little bits of overview of, hey, these are my sculpts. So we have like some high poly cool stuff. And we have some like textures here, which is like really nicely presented. But yeah, we're kind of missing like the steps in between, right? I would say, depending on, I think this one had some breakdowns, right? So we kind of have this one here. The presentation can be definitely improved. I think you've learned so much with like the last two projects that you can apply those same tricks to the presentation that you have here as well, to make it just like a little bit more interesting to look at. But this is a sort of information that's really interesting, right? Because it's also like, oh, so you recognize that this was like a long part of the blade, so you decided to go for like a non-square texture, right? Cool. That's a good way of showcasing that, right? Because now I know that you also know like non-square textures and all that kind of stuff. So it shows like a bit of technical depth, right? A technical understanding depth there. Hudson is asking, are breakdowns more important than the overall render and look? No, but we're talking about a person that has already set like a pretty high bar for themselves when it comes to the actual artist side, right? And then you kind of have to make sure that like the technical side is also like, well, it's not even that it's not necessarily not understood, it's more that it's also showcased, right? Because that's what it really comes down to, is that you can showcase the stuff visually as well. So that's what we're really going after here. So the art definitely always comes first, right? Because that's how you attract people to your portfolio. That's how they see that you're a good artist. And then you need to showcase that you can also do like the technical pipeline as well. But the art always comes first. Because from a very broad perspective, teaching someone how to press buttons in a program is going to be easier than teaching someone to make beautiful art, right? It can still be learned, but it's going to take a lot longer to do the same thing. Joppe is saying, go back to Notepad and Linkin Park music. Oh my god, yeah, I forgot about like the blasting music, like usually clipping as well. Yeah, but this is an example of like a good informative breakdown, right? There are some areas here on like the wireframe that get like pretty hazy because we can't really see what's happening at a certain point. So that would be like a thing that you could potentially solve for by like zooming more in and having us get like a clear perspective of the wireframe. So that can definitely be improved. But we're really just like splitting hairs on something. So I think you're already in a really good spot. Let's clip through a couple more, and then we'll have to jump on to the next person. So you got trees. So what I'm kind of seeing is that you're building out your skill set, right? From like a very broad perspective, I'm seeing, okay, you've got an asset, you've got your trees, and you've got like environments. So everything is kind of coming together. And you're trying to like build out your skill sets when it comes to like, oh, I feel like I'm missing X skill. then I'll improve that skill, right? Yeah, Helena saying whatever feedback I can get, help me land that job. I'll take nitpicking. Yeah, to be like really honest, I think in better circumstances, you would have already gotten a job, right? So there's only so much more you can do. Of course, like all those nitpicky things and like improving on like, if we're talking about like really nitpicking stuff, it would literally be, okay, how big does the logo need to be? Like, what's the font that you use to present yourself? Like the consistency of the presentation. Maybe this one can be more interesting, right? Because we're still just like doing with like a plane and like spheres, right? We kind of want to make it more interesting, more in the context of the world, perhaps. But it's also like, those are like minuscule gains on top of what basically comes down to like, I think we're back. Oh no, I think we're still getting disconnects. Uh-oh. Let me see. Okay, are we back? You are back. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. So, yeah, it's literally like all those like tiny things that make like those are the things that you need to focus on now, right? Like improving like the background. That's the last thing that I was basically on about. It's just improving like the floor here by adding like the sand that you already have and kind of have like an edge that kind of dithers off so that you have like a platform, right? Or like a little bit of landscape. It's those tiny things and just, yeah, making sure that the presentation is like, yeah, just a little bits better, right? But we're talking about like incremental changes now that you have to focus on. Man. Because, yeah, let's see. It's got the vending machine. Four different texture sets? Is that what I'm seeing? It doesn't really say, right? So let's see. Yeah, but I'm assuming we got like four different like layouts here. This is where like the information gets a little bit unclear, right? Because I can't really get, I mean, I get it from like, oh, these are like four different UVs, but maybe these are like optimized in terms of like texture size, right? So that's the information that's kind of missing. It's also a bit overkill, I agree. You can definitely be like way smarter with like the way that you pack this now. So yeah, especially if you look at it from like a game context, right? Like this is now, I feel like you definitely can make it a hero prop, right? But I feel like the way that you then have to justify that is by making adding a bunch of non-generic stuff to the texture, right? So we kind of have like a little bit of that already. I don't want to say that you don't, but you kind of have this like, what is it? Like this little sticker or post that got attached to it. But then I want to see like more detail in it. If you then, because now we're trying to justify the use of four different textures, right? So we're kind of doing that to justify it. Because also, for me, it's cinematic. Yeah, but you can't use that every time, Thomas. Come on. Like it's more interesting to me to see how you work within like really tight restrictions. So let's say, for example, you need to make all of this work with like a singular like 2K map, right? Like how do you prioritize what you're gonna add on there, and how are you gonna be dedicating like UV space to like certain areas to kind of make it work, right? Or maybe you then have like, hey, this is going to be the bulk of it, and then I just have like my graphics as like a smaller texture, but I can at least fully dedicate that space to like those graphics and make them look like crisp, right? So trim sheet and floating planes could be one. You could also do, there's so many options, right? It could be fully unique. So the whole thing is like fully unique, but you then are smart with like the things that need more graphical fidelity, which is usually like readable text or like small logos or anything like that. And you can add that as like separate things on top of it, right? Because if we're really zooming out, this is the easiest thing to do, right? Just imagining that you have no restrictions and then having like it's not, there is a decent amount of just like dead space in your UVs that if you were to combine them all, you can use them like way more optimized, right? And that is way more interesting to see from a technical aspect than a limitless budget for like a prop, right? Even for a cinematic tileable texture, then a material on the outside and UV the rest in a single plane. Yeah. So, and that's where it becomes really interesting, right? Because we can then see how you approach artistic restrictions in your own way, right? And that is also why these breakdowns are so important to showcase, right? Because we get a glimpse of your thought process and how you circumvent like restrictions that you usually encounter in games as well. Hudson is saying, artistic wise though, you're on the right track, like blazingly on there. Yeah, and I think so too. Like visually, it's nice. You got like the little animations, like it is cool to look at, right? And that's also the thing here, right? Like, because graphically it's already like really nice and it tells a story, that stuff is already taken care of. Now it's more about like the smaller details and how you make those the best that you can, right? Because definitely the texture can be a lot of improved, right? This is from, when is this? 6 months. And yeah, you're doing a lot of work already, right? You're doing a lot of work already in that time span. So I bet you that you can even like improve on this as you look back at it now. But there's definitely a lot of improvements that can be done on the texture side to make it look way better than it now does. Helena says, I would definitely do it with a tileable and trim sheet now, second UV set for RGB, and then just have like one texture set. Yeah, exactly. It is much cooler environment artist who knows Houdini compared to one who doesn't. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely benefits that you can get out of it, right? For sure. It also makes you more applicable to the games industry itself as like, hey, I want a job, technical skills. Cool. Thomas is saying, just because you can optimize doesn't mean that you should. It all depends on the context, right? That's usually like the thing that I try to focus on a lot. It's just everything depends on the context, because like you said yourself, Thomas, if you're going for like a cinematic quality asset, then it becomes more about like, oh, I can showcase like how accurate I can get my textures, right? So it all kind of depends on the context. It was more to showcase I could do a hard surface at that point, so I think I just neglected fully optimizing it, to be honest. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like, that's a good thing to realize, right? And I want it would be interesting to have you think more deeply about that realization, where you're like, okay, it was a showcase to do something hard surface, and I neglected fully optimizing it. So is it the best showcase of my abilities, even if it's for hard surface, right? And that's a question that you have to ask for yourself, right? Because that's usually what it just comes down to, right? Like your portfolio is just you thinking about like, okay, how do I present myself? Like what am I putting on the table in terms of like visual quality, technical skills, all that kind of stuff. Because that's why they say like your portfolio is as strong as your weakest piece, right? Because, and I'm not saying that this is like the worst of the worst that we've ever seen, right? Like no way, no way. But it is just because it's human nature to kind of focus on the negatives, and they stick with us for longer. So let's do some like quick role play here, right? Like I'm seeing your portfolio, and I'm a recruiter for a job. I'm seeing your portfolio, and this is the page that I land on, and we have a project that is like, we really need to optimize like all the resources, right? Like, and we're really like restricted in the amount of stuff that we can use. This could be the thing that for that specific project in that studio, you can then be like, yeah, we're going to go with this other person because they do showcase that. And that's usually what it comes down to, right? Like as silly as that sounds, as like a vocal example of that is what it could come down to. But yeah, definitely like Helena is saying, it's good to reflect on for sure. And again, like it's in no way to like dunk on the it's in no way to dunk on like the artistic side of things, right? It's just you have to train yourself to be like objective, right? Again, not saying that you aren't, but it's good to have that like, okay, what if I were a recruiter? Would I hire myself in that place, you know? That's a good question, Helena. So I would love to know what you think my weakest work is. Yeah, I think that's a good question. So you're saying the rainforest project, right? I think I agree. Even with not seeing, well, I've seen this like a long time ago when you posted it, and it was very chaotic in terms of like the colors that you use and the details, and just everything feels really noisy, right? And it doesn't feel like, if you compare this, for example, to this, visually, from like an artistic perspective, we're being guided somewhere. And it's really nicely structured. You've really thought about it. And like, okay, I structured this in this way. We got the fish here. I don't want the fish there because then it takes too much attention. That is sort of the stuff that's missing here, right? This feels like we're not there yet. Like we're still figuring out like how to compose a project. So yeah, I think so too. And it's also a great, I would say definitely remove it from your portfolio if you have that gut feeling already. And I would second that gut feeling. Because yeah, like the stuff that you have on your portfolio now is like so much better. And there's like stuff that you can save potentially too, right? Because you're doing some like really cool stuff here. Maybe strip that out, right? Strip that out and make like a technical showcase out of it rather than a portfolio piece. I'm gonna hate on the cyberpunk vending machine. The rainforest is pretty cool. So this might be where like tastes come into it a little bit, right? If you look at it from like an artistic, like fundamental perspective, the cyberpunk vending machine is like way better constructed than the forest. So yeah, I think I agree. No, I don't think, I do agree with your opinion on that too. I think I have a technical showcase of it on my blog. It might be, it depends on how you showcase it, right? It might be interesting to kind of have that as like a portfolio piece, so that it can just be like, hey, this is maybe some random stuff that I tried to make into a portfolio project, but I just couldn't because the project itself wasn't good enough. But I really want to show off the technical stuff behind it. Okay. What did we discuss? Let's do a little recap here. So, number one we discussed is, we'll just call it sweat the small stuff. So that is literally the structure of the post, like the aspect ratio, the borders around it, like how big is the logo, like all that kind of stuff, right? That's what you need to focus on next, to like, yeah, get your portfolio in the current form in like a better shape, right? That's something that we talked about. It's not a big thing, but it's worth looking at because you're really getting to that point. Number two is, yeah, cut out weak links, right? You really be honest and brutal with yourself. There's some stuff that you can be like, we're gonna keep that because that adds value, or maybe we're gonna put that to rest, right? Even from the thumbnails, I would say that like the rainforest is the weakest point. Followed by, let's do a little breakdown here, right? Oh, sorry. We didn't even look at it. But I feel like this one. And then those are the two that really jump out. Because there are some benefits here, right? So for example, with the tree here, it's just a foliage project, so it doesn't have to be like a big project. That's cool. You got a couple of assets here. Cool. I would say if we're being that one is like a maybe at this point. Because this one shows off your skills like way better compared to that one. So I would have a think about that. I don't think it's as bad as like, oh no, immediately cut that one. But it's worth considering. Maybe get some additional opinions on that as well. And then, let's see, is it a number 3 that we can talk about? Maybe, So Helena is saying, I can cut the rainforest in the cave and make a replacement project for the vending machine and then remove that too. Seems like a good in between. So the thing that I was going to bring up though, and I think this is number 3. That's the question that I'm asking. Who are you as an artist? Right? We're kind of getting a glimpse of like this oh god, this is like weirdly hard to define, right? But let's call it like semi-stylized look, right? To keep an open mind here. So it's not realism, but it's also not like fully stylized. It's like a nice blend between. And maybe that's the thing that I'm kind of wondering about. Like, what do you really want to work on? Like, you know, if I'm in like a hiring position, like I want to know who you are as like an artist and like what you would have like as your dream job, right? Just to get an idea of like, yeah, who you are, like true to your nature. Because some of it kind of feels like we're going on feelings here, right? So Russ is saying Helena is an artist. As an artist, it's whims. Okay. I get the feeling that you love this one. And I get the feeling that you really love this one as well, for sure. Huh. Yeah. I think those two. That you love them way more than the other stuff in your portfolio. I get that feeling. Just because they're way bigger in scope. Yeah, I think that's the question that I'm trying to answer, right? So Helena is asking, what makes you think I love them? Just curious. That's what I'm thinking about, like, how do I word that? Because sometimes you get a feeling of the passion that a person put into the project, and I think that comes from this perception of the amount of detail that has gone into the environment, where really, like, everything, like, you just put like so much attention to detail in everything, that's where I feel that you have what is often referred to as like the passion for that project, right? Like, it's something that is like internally motivated, where you can be like, hey, this is something I really want to work on, and I really want to put like the final details in this. I was gonna say the church as well. I know that you really spend a lot of time on the church, so that was gonna be like my number 3 out of all of them. But it just feels like with some of them, they kind of feel like you got a little bit tired of them. Right? It's just like, oh, it's like, it's not as ambitious as some of the other ones. Maybe that's a good way of looking at it. And you can kind of tell, right? Like, I'm cutting out like the assets because I'm just engaging with like the environments for now, right? To kind of make it simpler so that we can compare like apples to apples, right? So that's what I'm looking at currently. And it just feels that in the ones that I kind of picked out, and then potentially the church as well, you've really just put like all the attention to detail, and you kind of feel like, okay, from beginning to end, I mean, it's still work for sure, but like you've really put that amount of time in to make it look really good. So I'm wondering, this comes back to number 3, right? Think about those projects and think about what you really liked about those projects, and maybe you can distill that into actually like a thing that you can invest more into coming projects, right? Because that's going to make the work stronger than it currently is. And again, not that the other projects are bad by any means, right? But there's something about those projects that elevates them above the other projects. Does that make sense? I know it's very, very high level, but I hope that sort of makes sense. It makes sense. I'm glad. Okay, but thank you, Helena. Thank you for asking the questions as well. So I think, honestly, that's the biggest thing that I would think about. Because what I also don't want people to do and get away from these portfolio reviews is that it's fine that you make stuff that gets you closer to getting into the industry, but you don't want to sacrifice too much of what you bring to the project to kind of make the project feel a bit more simple, or lacking that personality that you yourself put into things, right? Hudson, how hard is it to get hired as an environment artist these days? These days, I mean, the people that I kind of went into the industry with, they're also getting fired. So we just had like PlayStation Visual Arts that let go of like a bunch of people that I looked up to when I was getting into the industry, or that I like worked together with on like certain projects as well. It's really hard to get hired as like an environment artist these days. That doesn't mean that it's impossible. Don't get me wrong. It is just where the industry is going through like this construction phase. So It's rough out there. Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I was saying before, right? Like in a normal circumstance, I would almost guarantee that Helena had already gotten a job, right? I mean, you've had a job before, but like, yeah, that you've gotten like a new job, right? It's like I need a PhD degree and also competing with amazing artists like Helena. No, you only need to do the second part. You don't need a degree. So I hope that simplified it for you, Hudson. Okay, thank you, Helena. Next one for today is Levy Troost from Brussels in Belgium. So from my home country. Good to see you, Levy. Matt has the right idea in the chat. Just keep creating and keep hoping. Yeah, honestly, like, this is the thing, right? Like, you know that stereotypical question when people ask you, like, oh, what would you be doing if you weren't getting into the games industry? Or like, if art wasn't your thing? I was like, the fuck? That's such a stupid question. I was doing this as a kid for free, and I don't know, you know? Like, I would do this regardless. Yeah, I would probably need to get like a job somewhere else to like pay the bills, but I would be still doing this. There's no taking art from me. I would just keep learning as a hobbyist as well. Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing, right? Like, there is something. This is gonna sound so weird. There's something that you give up when you become a commercial artist, which is like what you are as like an environment artist, right? You work for a commercial company, so there's some like degrees of creative freedom that you give up while working on like bigger projects, right? That's normal. It's not gonna be your art direction. That doesn't make sense. So keep enjoying that, because that's the benefit of just working for yourself. Especially as a hobbyist, you don't got like all the pressures that come with it. Let's have a look at Levy. So, passionate about creating new worlds. I thrive on developing entire universes around characters and stories. I love collaborating with others, understanding them, growing together, and bringing new stories to life. Okay, so this thing over here, pretty generic, right? Like, as an environment artist, I mean, I did the same thing. I feel like passionate about creating new worlds is probably my tagline as well. So if that is really who you are, like, add that in there. But like, I love collaborating with others, understanding them, growing together, and bringing new stories to life. It kind of feels like very like high level. I'm not getting any sense of like personality in here, right? So that would be like the first thing. We're gonna personalize like the description here. I think that's already gonna help a lot. Well, a lot. It's like a drop in the bucket, right? But it's gonna help. You want people to get like a sense of who's behind the work here, right? If you're gonna approach it from that way. Let's have a look at the about page. Oh, okay. From Montreal. Dang, that's cool. Let's see. Yeah. It's not too much to dig in there. Let's have a look at some of the work then. We're gonna start out here. So we've got some paintings. Oh, pure overpainting. So without 3D texturing, 3D modeling, and overpainting in Photoshop. Oh, okay. You mean that like you started as like it's like a 3D base and then just painted over it. Okay. Here's the work that I made for the second tour of the French B3CF Championship. Cool, so we got some like 2D art in here. Created a scene in 3D and then as a paint over, okay. we're trying to get a sense here, right? So this is all 2D work. Well, 3D and then 2D on top of it, right? And then we've got some stuff from the game. Okay. You can already see what I'm doing, right? It's like a very visual representation of what is happening. There's just so much in here that this is not grabbing me whatsoever, right? Like this is not leaving like an impression. I think if you want to make a post like this, you will have to condense it to visually different stuff. Right? So like starting with a video and then maybe like a couple additional screenshots is fine. But like the majority of these are like relatively samey. What I would do in this case is maybe get like a breakdown or like an overview of like all the assets used together, right? Because this is just showing like the level art, I think. Let's see. Level art, managing everything from conceptualization. Conceptualization and modeling to texturing and final composition. Okay, so in the description here, you say, I was responsible for the 3D and level art part, managing everything from conceptualization and modeling to texturing and final composition. Those two are not linked to each other, right? If you tell me that you've only worked on the 3D and the level art part, which is like, oh, you created assets and you put them in the level, right? But it sounds like you did like a whole bunch of stuff. So that would be something to like clear up, because I'm unsure of what you mean by that. And it makes it somewhat confusing to look into. Because here's the thing, right? Like you have your personal projects, which are usually focused on like, hey, these are my individual skills that I bring to the table. And then you've got your professional projects, which is like, hey, this is a skill set that I used in a team composition, and this is what I shine at, right? Like these are my responsibilities as an individual within the team, right? Those are going to be different, right? So we need to be able to highlight the difference between the two as well. So I think there's some cool stuff happening here, but it's a lot, right? I honestly think that this is a case, in my opinion, of just like portfolio bloat, where you just try to add so much stuff in there that at this point, like, it just becomes like too much, right? Because these posts are probably going to be like relatively the same. And there's just so much information in here. Well, he created the game. I mean, he was a pretty big part of it from the sounds of it. I mean, if you're saying like managing everything from concepts and modeling to texturing and final composition, that's a huge part of the pipeline. Hey, Harry, welcome. Good to see you here. So yeah, so I'm just gonna have to skip through most of this stuff, right? Well, through like the venture to the vial parts, we need to condense that down. Like that can be condensed to 2 posts, perhaps. But I want to see like more breakdowns if possible, because it's for a company and I don't know how they want you to show that stuff. But visualizing the responsibilities in the best way that you can is going to be way better for your portfolio than just having like a shit ton of stuff in there. Even if you, I mean, we did like a whole 1 by 1 kilometer map right? With like a bunch of different locations that I've all built from scratch and like did a bunch of terrain sculpting. And this is like just the most interesting stuff that I could pick, right? And then you kind of highlight your responsibilities like either in here. So you say, oh, I was responsible for blocking out the area, initial terrain sculpting, set dressing, outsource management, and had the ownership of 2 of the bigger locations, right? So that's like a very condensed way of saying like, hey, these are my responsibilities within the team setting. But you don't need to flood like the whole thing with like a bunch of images, because that's kind of counterintuitive. That's the way that I would approach it. Let's have a look at these guys. Description first. A personal project that I've been working on for the last few days. I would not mention time, because that is just like, oh, why didn't you spend like a couple of extra days to make it better, right? I feel like that's like, again, very counterproductive of saying like, oh, I've only worked on it for like a couple of days. You're undermining yourself in like a very, very subconscious way. Da-da-da. This is cool though. You've got the person in poses as well. That's really cool. Low poly, high poly, UV, and texture. I do like this presentation. The only thing that's missing is I want to see how you laid out your UVs, right? So with your UVs, I would have like, hey, these are my 2 UVs. And then with your textures, I would say these are my textures that I'm using. Right? And probably shift like everything up to the left so that you have some room for that. But that could be like a pretty interesting like collage of images where you just say like, okay, low poly first, cool. High poly, nice. Maybe even had like a wireframe here. It's like a wireframe, and then the amount of polys, right? So that we can get a good idea of like, okay, this many polys, that's good. And then your UVs like laid out, and then your textures laid out as well. Because that is literally putting everything on the table, right? And then there can be like no confusion, and we can see everything from beginning to end. Awesome. That's what we want to have. I would think about the order that you're presenting it in. This is way more impactful visually, way more interesting to look at than this, right? This is like the most boring version of this sword that you can have. I would love to see this. I would even cut out a video, just like slow turntable. It's not like interesting to look at, right? Like we're trying to entice people like visually. This is not really that interesting. I would potentially go for something more like this, or maybe even have like the same setup and then having them rotate as well, right? Because then we can see like the close-up of it as well. But yeah, it just comes down to like picking the best renders of the whole scene and making sure that they're like front and center, and then do a breakdown afterwards and cut out all the fluff in between. This presentation is really nice and clean though. Like I like where this is going. Again, if you add like those couple of like UVs and textures, like this is really, really clean. The way that you're presenting this is really good. And then we got this stuff as well. This stuff is nice. You know, I like these renders, like that style that you have going for it. Looks cool. So I would definitely like swap them out. I would potentially... I would cut out the top 2 again. And I would have like a more dynamic pose well, a more dynamic angle of the hammer. And then follow it up with something like this, because then it's the thing separate, right? So we're giving like a good impression of the object, and then we're giving it in context, so someone's holding it, and then we do the breakdown, which is great. Also, another thing here, I'm seeing that you are presenting it in Marmoset tool bag, right? If there's already a recommendation from my side, is just presenting it in like a game engine, because that's going to give you like an additional tool that people can say like, oh yeah, they know how to make something look good in an engine. It's a small win compared to Marmoset Toolbag, right? Because Marmoset Toolbag is also like a real-time rendering, so it's a small win, but it's worth to add on your portfolio, especially for game art, right? And then we've got these two guys. This is the last project I made on the side. We already talked about like the timelines. Modeling, sculpting, and texturing from scratch. So you're saying modeling, sculpting, and texturing from scratch. Beautiful texture work though. Yeah. So modeling, sculpting, and texturing from scratch. But then what is not done by you, right? If you've done everything in this, if you've done everything, I would honestly just say like everything is done by me, right? Or something equivalent of that. And then call out the things that you didn't do. For example, if you didn't do the trees for whatever reason, then swap them out. And I would also start with this little story beat, right? Like switch them up, then have like a separation between the two by just adding like a couple of dots or like a line or whatever, and then having like your breakdown again. Because I kind of want to know about the story first. I kind of want to read that above the fold, and then I can show more, and that's where like the technical stuff comes in. Hey, Tobias, how's it going? Cool, so this is really pretty from an artistic level, but we're missing breakdowns, right? I kind of want to see the workflows that you use to construct this, right? That's what we're missing here. Is it optimized? Is it game ready? Like all that kind of stuff. It is very, very pretty from like an artistic level, right? But we're missing the context of like, hey, I want to get into games. You want to showcase that you can do games, right? And that's probably the same can probably apply here. Oh, here we go. So cool. We're starting out with a little story here. That's cool, right? I love this kind of stuff. Then last project I made on the side. Hope you like it. Are we doing any breakdowns here? Nope. So this is by far the lightest on actual details on how did you go about making it like appropriate for like a game, right? So that would be like the huge thing to focus on, is making everything like more game ready. Because that is the big thing that is lacking here now. So that will be number one. Make everything like game ready, or showcase that you know how to optimize for a game. Basically with game ready, you're trying to showcase what it takes to get your art looking as good in a game engine compared to where you're rendering it now, right? And there's a whole bunch of learnings that are going to come in there that you haven't learned yet. And those are the things that, yeah, that are going to stand out, right? Optimize and present and like all that kind of stuff. Second thing was cutting down on all the fluff. That was going to be the second thing. That can be on a portfolio level, right? So that means, do I need like 5, 6 different entries for like all the game screenshots when most of the content in the actual portfolio, in the portfolio piece, is actually just like a lot of like relatively similar stuff? I don't think so. The way that I would break it up is you take it by, I don't know, section or something like that, where you say like, oh, in the first part of the game, like I did all this cool stuff, and then as a viewer, I can be like, oh, sorry, oh my god, I'm burping all over the place. But then as a viewer, I can be more enticed by the different images that we see and the different biomes and the different things that you worked on, right? So we wanna really optimize for making sure that we don't put too much of the same stuff, because the reason why I'm saying all of this is not because people get bored, but it's because it showcases an inability of picking out what is the best, right? And as an artist, that's what we need to do on a daily basis. We have to make decisions of like, oh, I'm gonna model it in this way because I'm sure that's gonna look better in the end, right? Or I'm gonna make a composition in this way because I know that's gonna be better in the end. That's all we do. So the reason, again, the reason why I'm saying this is not because we just want to make pretty pictures. It's because there's actually like an underlying reason there as well. So cut out all the fluff on your portfolio and your individual artworks as well. Both of them need to be way stricter with it. And then number 3, let's see. Oh yeah, breakdowns. It's showing how, right? You did that in these ones. We're getting to grips with it. It's missing the amount of polys that you used here, but this presentation is already really good. You just need to do the same sort of presentation for some individual aspects of these things that you created for your environment, right? Break them down. Let me see which kind of workflows you used and why you used them and where you used them, because that hints at, again, the underlying like artistic understanding of, oh, okay, he used this workflow here because then he could, let's say he used trim sheets here because then he could reuse that between like these things as well. Right, so that's the thing. Then about your illustrations, it is somewhat relevant in terms of like showcasing your artistic skill, right? I would potentially put them in like a different folder over here, just away from your main stuff, or maybe even just have like a single entry where it just says like, oh, 2D, right? And then you stack them all in there. Because again, I have the feeling that the reason why they're on there is just because of padding again. It's not that they don't add anything, but it's like they don't add as much to, again, this goal, right? It is still cool to see it in relation to your artistic fundamentals and your artistic skills and all that kind of stuff. But for an environment artist, it's more important that I see game-ready stuff where you self-direct and that shows breakdowns, right? That's the important stuff. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was helpful, Levy. It's good to see another Belgium in here as well. And we're gonna move swiftly on to the next person. In the meantime, for people that are jumping in the chat, thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions about the games industry, being an artist in it, or whatever you're struggling with at the moment, just feel free to drop it in the chat. We can talk about it. Or if you just want to let me know that you had a fantastic day and you ate like a bunch of pancakes or something like that, you know, that's also fine. Hello, Big AR. Good to see you here. Okay, cool. We're going to go on to the next person. Cameron Eddy from Leamington Spa, a local. So a 3D artist with a focus on hard surface modeling and photorealistic texturing. Cool, okay. Very specific, which is good, right? It gives you a goal, and the goal is like pretty much aligned to what we're seeing here, which is like really nice. I already had a sneak peek at some of your other work. Especially these two latest ones, so I'm curious to see some of these ones. No pancake here, but I'm still alive, I think. That's good. That is awesome. Good to see you here, Guillaume. There we go. Some nice breakdowns. Yeah. Clean presentation. These little details look like really nice. Like the letter. Really, really nice. Is one truly alive without pancakes though? That is also a very good question. We had some really nice pancakes over the weekend. It was awesome. Oh, let's not do that, please. Cool, so we had this one. This one is so interesting. Because it almost hurts my eyes from like... Oh, maybe it's just like the way that you textured it. It kind of feels really weird in these bumps. This looks beautiful though. Like this handle looks really, really nice. Like all the little details in it. Looks really nice. It's just that the steel itself looks really weird. It kind of feels like there's some inverted normal stuff going on as well. That is so weird. Where's that coming from? It feels like... So it feels like this blade. We're getting into... So this blade is flipped, I think, no? Flip normals? It just looks really weird. I don't know. Yeah, it looks... Yeah, that is just a weird little thing. Yeah, if it's supposed to be... Maybe it's the texturing as well. It is like pretty heavy on the cells texture, so... Not too sure about that one. The handle is beautiful though. The handle is really well done. Let's keep it going. Is it supposed to be like hammered copper? Yeah, I think it's not copper, right? But it's like shit, I can't remember. The Marion steel? Oh no, that's like the curvy steel, right? Where they fold it like 1,000 times to get it to look like that or something. That's something different entirely. Oh, I thought so. Part of your VFX degree from 2 years ago. Because I was confused why all the topology was there. But yeah, VFX makes sense. So that is interesting, right? So this is not VFX related at all. Let's have a look. No, single UV set. Yeah. And then this one is just projector. Okay, so this is VFX again. Like, not game ready, right? Steel Damascus. Damascus steel. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm kind of just thinking out loud here, right? I'm going through the portfolio because I kind of want to get like a good grip of like the breadth of the work. And then we'll discuss it a little bit more. I've already had a look at these two. These two look great. I mean, just look at it, right? Beautiful. That could convince for like a real render. So, job well done on that one. Really nice. Okay. Let's have a look at the reel. Let's have a look. Oh no, that's all Geo. No, I thought it was not Geo. Shit. Okay. Okay, I need to see this now. Wait. From Cave Academy, that's a VFX Academy, right? Okay, it's in here as well. I didn't see that last time. Okay, and then this project is low to high poly, or high to low poly again. Okay, when was this made? We gotta talk about this, right? So that was from a year ago. Okay, so the biggest thing here is that I don't know if you want to get into VFX or games, because like, let's split it up, right? So that's games, that's games, and the rest of it is VFX. That is honestly the biggest question that I have for you to start out with, right? You have really good texturing skills, but if you're unsure about like which industry you want to get into, they have completely different workflows, right? So we need to kind of suss that out first and figure out like, okay, do I want to go into games or do I want to go into like VFX? That's the first thing that I want to know, because a lot of people, like you saw me do it live, right? Like I was trying to get context because I was seeing games and VFX in the same thing. And that just means that there's a couple of different things there, right? Like either you don't know the difference in the workflows, right? But you do because you kind of showcase that. Or you don't know where to go yet and you're just trying to like hedge your bets and just do everything. But then I feel like you're also kind of shooting yourself in the foot by focusing on two different industries while you could like double down on the one, right? It's not necessarily a bad strategy, especially in the current climate. But I feel like if you're gonna be putting I mean, there is a lot of overlap. I'm kind of thinking out loud, right? Because there is a lot of overlap in the texturing. And the modeling, if you can do like high to low, then you can do games. And then for VFX, it kind of doesn't matter because the poly count doesn't matter there. It matters less than it does in games. So I guess you could kind of hedge your bets that way. But this is honestly a question that people are going to have as like a recruiter as well. Like if they see the work and they're like, oh, I can only look at these 3. So this is your entire portfolio now, right? Is that good enough? Because yeah, we can kind of look at the texturing here, but if you have like unlimited like poly count, then you can kind of get away with like a lot more stuff too. Because you could say like, oh, but like I can still look at the texturing here. Yeah, but like that's only to like a certain degree, right? Because in games, we would texture this completely differently in terms of how big my texture budget is going to be, how big my poly count is going to be. Also, how do I pack the textures? Like what sizes do I use, right? You're not dealing with like UDIMs and all that kind of stuff. So first thing is specialize. I'm going to add a question mark, right? Because I feel like if you don't want to specialize, which I can get in the current climate, you just want to get some, you just want to get a job, right? What I would do there is I would potentially split between game art and VFX as like different folders. So that it makes it a little bit more clear. Or maybe have like your main portfolio, then game art and then VFX related, right? Because then at least I can click on like, hey, I'm a VFX recruiter, I'm gonna click on VFX, right? That's the way that I would play that. If you don't necessarily wanna specialize. Most of the topology is like pretty good over here. There are a lot of edges that can be you need that for that silhouette, I guess. And that probably has like a slight bend to it as well. It's not that bad. There's probably certain areas where we could potentially look at, but overall it's pretty clean. The handle could potentially be, it kind of depends on like how curvy the shapes get here, right? That's where you can probably cut out a lot of the geometry. But yeah, texturing wise, texturing and modeling wise, this is all like pretty clean, right? Like it's really clean. So there's not too much to say on here. The thing that I'm missing though is like, how did you create those textures, right? Like how big are they? I think you say it in here, right? Like it's like 2 times a 4K texture. That is a lot. For a knife that is going to be this big in a game, right? Or like maybe even smaller. So it's all good that we're learning the high to low poly workflow, but I want to see you like execute on these textures in this way on like a singular 2K, right? Because that's honestly like more realistic for like a game scenario. Like how are you gonna then manage your resources in a more effective way, right? So that's what I would think about. Because this is almost like a product render in terms of like, oh yeah, we can just put anything on, right? And I can put like a lot of details on there, which you did, which you showcase as well. It's really detailed and it looks really nice. But that is going to change when you have to turn it down to like, I don't know, a singular 2K map or something like that, right? And the same thing here as well. I mean, you know how to render something, right? So you have like your render here and then you got a reference image. For effectivity, I would just put them like side by side and just have a direct comparison between the two. But yeah, this is like VFX, right? Like Arnold rendering. Yeah. So this is an interesting one. I mean, we blasted through that pretty quick. But I will say, the first thing that we already talked about is specialize or divide, right? So that's where we talked about like the different folders, or if you need to specialize. Because now you're just like a 3D prop artist. That is like super broad. And yeah, that's like the shotgun approach to like getting a job somewhere, right? Again, really good texturing skills. And I think those are like going to be really, really helpful. So yeah, that's definitely like a really good skill that you have already under your belt. The other thing that I would say again is optimize. Pretty common, but what I would do is this reel. I don't really care too much about it. Maybe for VFX, but in game art we don't really use reels, so I would probably not have that on there. Yeah, I'm only really looking at these three at this point, right? Because those are like relative to game art. And in comparison, if that would be like your game art portfolio, these two would need a better thumbnail. Because there are certain elements that are like really, really good. And you pick that out yourself as well, because it's one of your banner images as well, right? So like the handle here is the thing that you love the most. That is great. But that also shows you that like there's still work to be done on like the main blades, right? Or that there's something missing there that you didn't do just yet. So I would even think about like improving upon those projects and like maybe rendering them in a different way so that you get better thumbnails and work out of it as well. Or doing a thing where you just make new projects and at a certain point you phase these out completely, right? Because I'm assuming, because these are from like Infinity 27, I actually don't know who they are. Infinity 27, I'm assuming if that is not like a student project or something like that, right? You can keep them on there because it's like a professional product and it showcases that you've worked within like a production environment, right? So in that case, I would keep them on there. But yeah. Yeah, so basically at this point, let's see, what did we write down? Number 3 was optimize, and then number 2 was optimize, and then number 3 is, yeah, I was gonna say like make more, or like, I want you to go deeper into game art. It's a very surface level approach to game art at this point. And that's the issue with not specializing, is that you have a surface level understanding of both topics now, right? I can't speak for VFX, but I can tell you for like game art that there's like a lot of optimization, especially on the texture side, that you can do, because we usually don't have the benefit of working with like those like 2 4K maps. That's a lot of texture space that you're going to be using. When what is it, like a 4K? What were the stats on that again? Like 160 megabytes or something like that. There are entire environments that are made between, well, like with that budget, right? So just to put things in perspective, right? Like entire spaceships are made with that. So yeah. Not to say that it doesn't have its value, right? Because you kind of have to distill it down to, okay, this project showcases my texture work, but that texture work needs to be done on like a texture set that can be believable. So potentially a single 4K. I feel like that's already stretching it for the size of the asset. Maybe a 2K. What I would advise there is your next project, make it a single texture set, depending on the asset, of course, but make it a single texture set, and then scale it down to see what the effect of it is. And if the effect is not that big of a drop in quality or it's barely visible, it just means that you can go down from like a 4K to a 2K, for example. But yeah, try that out. I think that's a very helpful step. Cool. So in terms of future stuff, it's definitely specializing more. And I want to just see more of this quality, like the quality that we kind of see here, but with, just a deeper knowledge of what the restrictions are in like a relatively, like a realistic scenario for a game, right? That's what I would say. But the biggest thing to me is just, what do you want to focus on? Cool, Cameron. Thank you so much for sharing your work. And then last one for today. Joshua Mansfield from Orlando in the US. Currently a student at UCF studying game design, working on becoming the best 3D environment artist I can be. Okay. That's cool, right? The passion, I like it. But what are your unique interests therein, right? Like what is going to make you, I mean, it's relatively difficult to like talk about that now as a student, but think about that question, right? Like think about the question of, okay, like where do I stand out, or what do I want to do in the future? That can be interesting to look into. This is cool. So you got like a texture breakdowns. They're pretty nice. The render itself is really nice as well. So I think that's cool. Did a good job on the renders. The joke in there, that's up to you. I tend to keep my professional, like my portfolio, like strictly on the professional side, right? Because I'll tell you why. Like this is the thing that you don't know who's going to be interviewing you on the opposite side, and they might just be like, I just don't get it. And you don't want to run that risk, right? Like you kind of want to keep it. This sounds so silly, but you kind of want to keep it as like straightforward and sterile as possible, in my opinion. You could also make the argument that you just swing the opposite way and you kind of interject like a lot of fun into it and kind of stand out that way. But in my opinion, like it kind of deviates from like what a portfolio should be about. Let's see. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool little overview here. I like the way that you rendered it. Really good presentation as well. The thing that I'm missing here the most is I kind of want to see it in context, right? Like showcase an area, like a street corner or whatever. Grab some Megascan assets, build like a street corner really quickly, and then set up like a wall with this texture on, right? Inside of like Unreal, and show me the context of where this would be used, because that's going to be so interesting to look at. I feel that always elevates the content to another level, especially when working on materials, right? Because they're always meant to be used in like an environment. Let's see. I like the newer presentation more. Also created this arch cobblestone to learn substance designer, which is pretty good. I think this one is definitely way more interesting, right? In terms of presentation and also just like the skills that you're putting on the table. This is like way more finalized than this one. Obviously you're learning, but this is one skill that you need to like adopt really quickly, is just being like, okay, does this in the overall view of my portfolio, does this boost it up or drag it down? If it drags it down, we just get rid of it. We want to keep it at the highest level possible. This cool little Sword of Cthulhu. This is cool. A cool design as well. Ooh. The render looks really cool. Really stylized. That's awesome. Yeah. Great choice of concept. Yeah. By Monique Schilder. That is cool. Yeah. Cool little sword. Let's see. What are we missing here? So you kind of have like the wireframe here, which is quite a lot. So in this case, like usually it doesn't matter if you just have like, I don't know, like a decimated object or something like that, right? It usually doesn't matter all too much, and you've paid like extra attention to it. But there are certain areas where it gets like really dense, where you could go in and like manually like get a lot more out of it. So there's like areas like this. Basically any area where you see like a lot of white, that just means that the wireframe is like really, really dense, and it's an easy area to just like optimize. Right, so like all these areas, they're like pretty dense. So I would go in and like optimize these areas a little bit. The thing that I was saying in the beginning is that when you're showcasing like a wireframe like this, it is, I would probably say it's better to go in and do a lot of it manually, so that it's the best version of what it can be, and that they also know on the opposite side that like, oh, this person didn't just like do like a remesh or like a decimate or something like that. No, they actually took care to make it like the lowest amount possible, right? And remove all the wastage. George is asking, where do I send my portfolio in? These happen on like a monthly basis, and I'm currently going through like the back catalog. Which there's still like quite a lot of people in there. But you can sign up on this site over here if you want to. But let's see. So yeah, that's about the wireframe. We're still... Yeah, so you got like the textures here. The texture sets and the overview is really good. What I always recommend is that I want to see the context where like things are, right? So if you have like the sword right next to it, I can then see like, oh, okay, this eye is over here, this eye is over there, and I can get from context where things are and if they are justified in the amount of space that you're using. But yeah, the rest of it looks cool. You could do the same thing as your material, by the way. You could have this sword just, I don't know, on a box somewhere, you know, like you make a quick box, or you just grab one from Megascans and maybe like tweak the textures to make it a little bit more stylized, like all that kind of stuff you can do relatively quickly while really leveling up your portfolio presentation. So that could be a good shout as well. 2-day game jam, in which we had to create a project revolving around the theme It's Getting Hot in Here. For this project, I was the lead level designer as well as environment artist. Cool. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's go back for a second. So what am I thinking about? So the thing with student projects is that they're always gonna, especially game jams, right? They're always gonna look horrendous. All the game jams that I've done in 2 days, you cannot physically make them look good, right? So you kind of do like a bunch of shortcuts. So you got to think about like what kind of value do you think that this is adding to your portfolio? I would potentially add this in your about section instead, and just have like a singular image where you say like, hey, participate in 2 game jams as like a lead level artist and lead level designer, right? And then maybe your responsibilities or something like that there. Because it is cool to have it, but I don't think it really justifies, because this just doesn't look as impressive as the sword that you have on your portfolio, for example, right? So that's always the way that we have to think about things. This looks interesting as like an environment artist or a prop artist to look at and be like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. And then we get to this. And that huge gap between just the visual appeal, that is where you as an artist stand out, right? Like that's our bread and butter. We need to make like visually appealing stuff. That doesn't mean that this has no credit. It's just we need to showcase it in a way where it doesn't distract from the other cool stuff that we do on our portfolio. So that's why I'm thinking about putting it on your experiences page instead. And potentially, this was longer, right? Fine overgrowth PCG. Yeah, so there's some cool stuff that you're showing off here. This stuff is pretty cool, right? Hey, thank you for the sub, Boba T. I appreciate it. I'm thinking about like what value does this add to your portfolio? Because I don't think the value necessarily comes from like just the visuals themselves. It comes from like the cool stuff that you built in the tools, right? So with this post, what I would do instead is I would focus more on the actual tool creation and put that first and foremost and have that as like the focus point of that project. That's the way that I would play it. And less on the actual environment art side of things. I know this is all very direct, right? But I can guarantee you that you're gonna make like, you basically, okay, an interesting example here is that you basically want your environment to look as good as this does, right? That's the bar that you kind of set for yourself on your portfolio. So using these kind of textures, which look really nice, and then your knowledge in like texturing and all that kind of stuff, like you need to put those two together and then make a diorama or an environment. And then I would honestly just add that to your experiences again, right? Like, hey, I did a challenge, Project Titan, it was cool, but it's not going to be part of like, hey, this is what I'm what I'm really proud of as my portfolio piece. I mean, really proud of is like a strong way of saying it, but like you want to be visually sell yourself, right? And again, this idea of your portfolio is only as strong as your weakest piece comes down to this, right? You really need to cut out the fluff and just make it the best that you can. And sometimes that means that you only have like 2 pieces, let's say. But those pieces, they elevate your whole portfolio to the next level rather than dragging it down to like the level below it, right? So let's do a quick little recap here. What did we talk about? So number 1 was, cut out old projects, right? Or like, you gotta really just cut out stuff. If you think that it doesn't hold up to like the thing that is really visually impressive, these 2 projects, it needs to go, right? If it doesn't come close, then it needs to go. So we need to cut out projects. Number 2 is, we talked about it a little bit when it comes to the materials, but context can actually be like a really cool tool to elevate projects, right? So what that means is, on the sword, we just build like a tiny little diorama, maybe with like mega scans or anything like that. We just put that in there. Same with the material. We put that on an actual wall inside of an environment, and that gives us the context, right? Like, do a little bit of set dressing, very quick stuff, but it elevates it because now, oh, I can see it becoming a part of a bigger environment rather than just being like a material sphere or a plane. Right, so the context thing can apply in like a lot of different ways. And then number 3 is separate your game jams and challenges. Challenges from your portfolio. I think if they hit the visual benchmark, right, that you set for your portfolio, add them in there. But if they don't, then I would probably just put them in your experience, like in like the About tab or something like that. That's the way that I would play it, because you just don't want to run the risk of people cracking down on it, right? Or like your entire portfolio seeming like, basically again, like being dragged down to the lowest level, right? Cool. Thank you, Joshua. That was awesome. I know that sometimes we go like pretty hard on these, but that is also just because I want like the best for all of you, right? Like, everyone can make it, but that means that sometimes we have to just be objective about our stuff and like really take a step back and see like, okay, am I putting my best foot forward or am I shooting myself in the foot a little bit? But yeah, keep it up, Joshua. Like, the stuff that you're doing, being active in these challenges, like the game jams, like putting the work out there, you're actively seeking for mentorships. That is like a recipe of success, right? So keep all that stuff up, because that's going to be awesome for you, Joshua. So best of luck, buddy. All right, let's switch it over for a... Oh no, where'd the chat box go? No. Oh well. We had a question from Connor B. Now that Megascans is paywalled, how is it viewed only using paid assets from other packs as filler in your projects? Oh, you mean that you're no longer using Megascans, but you're using other asset packages? Nothing changed there, really, right? Like, the main issue is not that you use paid or free or asset packages at all. It's about how you use them. It basically comes down to, don't use them to replace the focal point of your environment, right? So let's say you make this, I don't know, you make this like cool looking sword, like the one that we saw from Joshua. Like, it's fine to have like a little bit of filler in the background to make like the environment around it, right? If you can kind of tie the two together. However, you're not going to be replacing the sword from Megascans, because that's a thing where you want people to focus on, right? So, like, identifying what is the core of the project and then building stuff around it, that's fine. That's also how it works in the industry, right? Like, if you really think about it, like, it works in like multiple degrees, right? So sometimes there's pre-existing assets from like other games that get like pulled into like newer games as well. There's outsource, and like all those things are just done in a way so that it allows the core team to focus on the stuff that actually matters, right? Because usually outsource is just done for the stuff that can be easily done by someone else, which is usually assets, because they're like self-contained little things and they usually don't have a big bearing on the project, right? It's more about like the volume and making sense of the actual world. That's why we need them. But yeah. And then usually the assets that are done in-house, they're the ones that are like really important, right? Like the focal points again. So yeah. I kind of have a weird personal judgment about doing everything that I'm trying to get over. That's good to know. That's not a big deal. Look, man, I mean, you're talking to the wrong guy, because I still love doing everything. Like the stuff that you see in the background, that medieval village, I did everything. Oh, no, that's not true. I replaced the trees because... So here's how bad I am, right? Oh, God. I went so far that I made my own version of SpeedTree inside of geometry nodes, because I didn't want to use like any Megascans or like any SpeedTree trees or whatever kind of trees that were available, right? So I built my own replica of an existing tool because I just wanted to make it myself. And then at a certain point, I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's even available like in some of my latest live streams. You can kind of see me building it, I think. But this is like ages ago, right? But I literally built with like geometry nodes based on splines. I would make my own tree generator. And to actually make it look good, I would need to spend like, I don't know, like another year or something like that working on it. And I was like, okay, this is silly. I can just take trees, because the thing that really matters here, I don't want to work on trees professionally, right? So why do I even bother with like making trees myself and coming up with this like really elaborate system? Because I don't want to do that professionally, right? So I might as well just cut corners and be like, hey, I'm just going to use that stuff here. Yeah, it's more about like the point that I'm really trying to get across is that you should focus on the stuff that you want to do, right? Or need to do to get into the position where you want to be. That's the stuff that matters, and the rest of it is fluff, right? So yeah. So another example here with foliage is that if you're making an environment and you need a forest, you don't need to make the forest yourself. You can just go and grab Megascans or whatever is available out there and just throw them in there, you know? That's the thing. Because it's not about the forest that's in the background. It's about the thing that you want to showcase that happens to be in that forest, right? Because everything is kind of like, it's a sacrifice either way, right? Like you can be, okay, if I do the foliage myself, like it makes my portfolio more interesting, sure. But let's say you spend like, I don't know, like another month, or let's say another month or two working on foliage that you made yourself and you make it look really good. That also means that time is also like a different project where you could have focused on another thing, right? So we're always making these like judgment calls between the two. Yeah. it's a hard thing to get over. Like you should just like start with some small stuff, right? Like start with, hey, I think trees are by far like the easiest thing, where you just have like trees in the background somewhere. Just fucking use trees, right? Like you're not gonna make them. I only have so much time, so it's just not worth getting lost in the literal weeds. Yeah, like the less trees that you have, or like the less time that you have, the more optimized you're going to be from like a time perspective. Or you need to be from a time perspective, right? Because otherwise you're just throwing like time out the window. And you don't want to be doing that if you have a list of it. This is also why deadlines are really important, because that is like a mental construct of just like, oh, I don't have that much time. So that you have to restrict yourself somewhere. Cool. But I'm going to leave it there for today. I'm going to do some other stuff because it's been a long day today. So I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. We do these like on a monthly basis. So I added like the link in the chat before. So if you want to sign up yourself as well, they can do. There's a long queue. Sorry for that. There's only so much time that I have as well. But yeah, there's links to the community. You can find all that good stuff in the description. Go check all that out. And I'll see you guys tomorrow as well, because tomorrow we're doing Whip Wednesday, our weekly feedback stream. So catch y'all tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.